Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.
You're watching Conversations with Jennylyn, and as always, I try to find the best of the best, the people who are making a massive difference on the planet, making lives better for each of us. And today I have three of them to share with you. One of my guests has been on my show many years ago to talk about her show, her company, Beyond the Fog. And today she has started a radio show with some great folks, and they're all here today to tell us about Beyond the Fog Radio. And I am referring to Suzanne Brown, and her two counterparts present with us today is Michaela and Jay. And I'm excited to hear about Beyond the Fog Radio, and as I'm sure all of you watching are. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks. So happy to be here.
So happy to be here.
So happy to share this time with you guys. Now, Suzanne, years ago you came on my show and we talked about Beyond the Fog, and I was very impressed with what you were doing, because whenever you go to big cities, everyone sends you to all of the tourist attractions, and all the best parts are usually the little small areas that no one really notices, but they are so great. And as I remember, that's part of what Beyond the Fog did. And now you have a radio show. Would you guys like to share where the idea came from and exactly what it is?
Okay, so Beyond the Fog Radio sprung out of nowhere because Jay Yee, who I know from a business networking program that we both belong to, called me up one day and said, Susan, how is Beyond the Fog, which is my customized tour company and special events company? And I said, Beyond the Fog is asleep until we have a vaccine and everyone's vaccinated. And this was last September or even August of 2020. So we were in the middle of the chaos. And he said, I have an idea for a podcast. And I said, really? What is it? And that's how Beyond the Fog Radio sprung up. Jay said, we really need to capture the art, history, and culture of San Francisco and the Bay Area because things are changing so rapidly. And so that's what we decided to do. And that's what happened. And what's wonderful is that Jay has a Jay Bodyworks, where he helps injured athletes get back to their natural selves. And he also has Swerve Studios, which is a recording studio. And then his friend Michaela Joy O'Shea has a photography company called MJ Photography, MJoy Photography. And so the combination of the three of us just was very much a natural fit.
This is awesome. I love when people collaborate, and I love when an idea comes, you don't just sit on it. So, CJ, do you want to tell us, where the idea came to you to do the podcast, or have you done podcasts in the past?
Sure. It was really inside of what really matters to me, and that is everyone around me thrives. And as you all know, throughout this last year during the pandemic, it's been challenging for everyone. Mm-hmm. So every week I would pick up the phone and I'd call at least one other business owner, see what they need, see how can I support them, and just to have someone to listen to them. And that morning I was reading the New York Times, and it was an article on Chinatown, and that Chinatown had been experiencing a decline in business since January, before we went on lockdown. And when I called Susan, the whole thing came about. And, I have a video production company and design company, and we have all of the equipment for producing a podcast. And I said, well, Susan, your company doesn't have to be asleep. We can actually build a following and tell the story of San Francisco, because all these people are moving, they're going back home, and soon enough, there'll be new people coming, I promise you. And we get to help shape what the next San Francisco would look like. So let's tell that history. So that's kind of how it started. And soon enough, I just picked up the phone. Susan picked up. She was so excited. I called Michaela right after, and before I finished telling her the whole thing, she goes, don't tell me anything else. I'm ready. Sign me up. Let's go." So
I
it came
love
pretty
it.
quickly.
I love it. So, Michaela, tell us about your part in this.
Yeah, so as Susan said, I'm a photographer, and I know Jay from being my trainer, and he's helping me rehabilitate from having back issues from being a wedding photographer. And so he knew that my business was also on hold because weddings and events were, as we know, stopped. So he did his call to me and said, why don't we collaborate? I have a video production. Why don't you come in? Let's do some video. Let's do some photography together. So we were kind of on a weekly check-in. And then he's like, hey, I just got off the phone with Susan. And let me tell you about Susan. And like he said, before he even finished, I was like, yes, sign me up for whatever it is. And so I started as just documenting behind the scenes and documenting the actual podcast itself, which in itself, I feel like is pretty unique for a podcast to actually have imagery of what goes on when you're interviewing people. So I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect that we brought right away. And then I'm also an aspiring voiceover actor. And so when we started doing the hosting aspect of it, I just sort of naturally fit into it. So now I'm a co-host as well.
This is wonderful. Now, how long ago did you guys start this podcast?
We started in September because we started with the first person we interviewed was Reverend Brown from Third Baptist Church. And then after that we interviewed every single week in person with our mask on 12 different people. So we had 12 before we even started. And then what we do now is from home. We do our intros and outros from home. And now we're going to start interviewing more people again because the 12 are getting, we've done 7 already. So it's time to interview more people.
So your company, how is the radio show helping your company? Is it just informative? Tell us.
Well, right now for me, it's just informative. So what I do is I do a little video for Beyond the Fog tour company on Tuesdays, and I put that up and I talk about what's coming up on Beyond the Fog radio the very next day. People aren't ready to really tour yet, and I'm not ready to give tours. So for me, hopefully people will know about Beyond the Fog for 2022.
Hopefully by then this virus is under control and some form of normalcy will be resumed, because I don't think we'll ever be the way we were before. I think even if someone comes out and declares that this virus is dead and it's not going to bother us anymore, there are always those people that won't trust what they're being told. So on some levels, our lives will always be changed from this experience. Jay, I love your attitude. I'm like you. I'm always promoting someone. I believe in doing that. It's what makes me happy. Where did your motivation come from during this crisis to be reaching out to people like you said you were?
Well, it's a great question. I grew up really protected, not like sheltered, but like protected. Like I had a lot of people watch out for me. So I owe a lot to my life. I owe a lot of my life to mentors and people watching out and making sure that there's someone with their hand on my back in case I were to fall backwards. And that's the attitude that I've picked up. And mostly I owe it to my grandmother, who recently passed in December, and a number of other mentors in my life. So it's been a value of mine to ensure that the community around me thrives, because if they thrive, I thrive.
I love it. You pay it forward. I know so many people who just receive and take, and they
Yes.
never think about doing something for someone else.
Yeah.
And I feel like my life I'm always doing for people, and I get a lot of flack for, why do you even bother to produce your show when you don't make any money? And I cannot tell you how bothered I am, like so tired. If one more person says that to me, I'm going to flip my lid, because I believe that it's not always, payback doesn't always come in a monetary form. And sometimes when you do good for people, it comes back to you. So
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful to you that you were doing that. How many people would you say on average you impacted during the COVID crisis?
Oh, wow. I don't know, but I will say that my staff reaching out to the community has been really at the bottom of our being able to survive during this time. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for what you've done. Michaela, you said you're an aspiring voiceover actress. And does this mean that you're no longer working as a photographer?
No, this is kind of my new side project,
Okay.
because as you mentioned before, this sense of normalcy of people gathering in numbers and events, that's what my business was. It was capturing people in large numbers at events. So instead of just sitting around waiting, I've decided to shift things a little bit. And so voiceover is something that I've always been interested in. When I was younger, I studied it a little bit. I was on college radio for a time. And what my husband's also my business partner. He's a photographer as well. So when the pandemic first started, we were going on Instagram Live every day. And we were just doing like this coffee talk, checking in with people in our wedding industry and events industry, and just talking to people and seeing how, kind of a lot like Jay, checking in with our community. And the biggest feedback I got was, you guys need to do a podcast. You need to do something with your voice, and all this stuff. So I've started taking some classes, and then really it was Jay just having this podcast idea, and now we're recording, and I'm learning about all of that and learning how to use my voice, which is scratchy this morning, allergies. But when you put energy into something, and if that's the direction you're supposed to go, I firmly believe that things will just happen. And so everything's falling into place. This podcast is just happening. We had this idea, and now we're talking to you, Jennylyn. I mean, this is great, right?
It is. Suzanne, you have been running your company Beyond the Fog for quite a while. Do you want to tell us how, over the years, how you've grown, and how, what kind of traffic you've gotten? Because a lot of people don't know about someone like you providing this great service for especially tourists.
So Beyond the Fog, pretty much, I don't really have any advertising. So what happens is it happens by word of mouth. And what started happening last year and the year after is that I started doing wedding proposals. So I would take all of the different things that I could set up for people and mush them into one big thing, and have like a wedding proposal where you're doing what's it called when you go and like a scavenger hunt. So there'd be a scavenger hunt, and then the spouse to be would go to the next location and the next and the next, and every time she got to one location, there would be somebody there to tell her about the history of the ferry building or the history of the Presidio. And then she or he would keep going until they got to the place where they were going to be asked to be married. So I've done those. I did a wedding. So it kind of sprouted out into other areas, which I really like.
I think that's really cool. Isn't it thoughtful how some people will go out of their way when they're making a marriage proposal or just a birthday, whatever the celebration is? So do you feel that you will be able to resume any of that anytime soon?
Yeah, I
People
think
still
so.
want to get married. People still have birthdays.
I think I'll be able to resume things. Like I said, at the end of 2021, the beginning of 2022, when people are more comfortable moving around each other. Starting tomorrow, 50 and up can be vaccinated. Then in 2 weeks, 16 and up can be vaccinated. So by the time a lot of people are vaccinated, the numbers stay down, people will start to move around and do things and want things to happen. And then I'll probably be flowing again. And until then, I love doing Beyond the Fog radio. It's become my passion, and it's become the thing I love the most on my life daily. I mean, it combines the things I love to do, which is to tell other people's stories and help people get information out. And I have a documentary film background, so this is a perfect mix of what I love to do.
This is great. Now, on my show many years ago, you talked about Beyond the Fog, but someone watching this interview may not know all about Beyond the Fog. Do you want to share a bit of its history with my viewers so they know exactly what Beyond the Fog is? The one thing that stuck out in my memory is you took people to Alcatraz in the night. How could I forget that? So do you want to share a little bit about the history of Beyond the Fog so someone watching will know?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So that's actually how Beyond the Fog got started. Was my father is Willie Brown, former mayor of San Francisco and former speaker of the California State Assembly.
And a former guest of the Jennylyn show.
And former guest of the Jennylyn show. And he called, and I still work full time for him in his nonprofit. So he called me in 2011 and said, and he's a lawyer still, called me and said, Susan, my biggest client would like to go to Alcatraz at night, get it done, goodbye. And I was like, how do I do that? How do I make it so people can go to Alcatraz by themselves at night? So what I did was I contacted who runs Alcatraz, which is the GGNRA, and they said we never have had nighttime tours because this is before they had nighttime tours, and it took them 2 weeks to get permission, and we got all the correct permits and permission, and then we set it up so that as the last public boat came in, the gentleman and his date, which is now his wife, were waiting on the dock with the park ranger. And as everyone got off, they got on, and they had a 3-hour tour of Alcatraz at night by themselves. And because of that, I thought, okay, if I can do that, what else can I do? So I ran around and I made friends that summer with everybody and anyone who would talk to me about doing a behind the scenes experience of something that's iconic in San Francisco, open to the public during the day, but at night when they're closed, letting people in. And that's how Beyond the Fog got started. And now I have a bunch of things that I can do for people. Some of my most favorite thing is to talk to my client and come up with something brand new that I'd never done before. And then I have to lose my mind and figure out who owns whatever that is they want to do and then do it. So I like the challenge.
My question is, I find Alcatraz spooky in the day. Who wants to go there at night and why? But I could imagine some people like that. Like if for movies, they like if they're doing a scary movie or they believe in that and they want to see what the experience is at night. Have you had a lot of people going there at night?
No, I haven't. But I did do. This is a nice nighttime thing to do. Is to go to the Conservatory of Flowers at night when it's empty and no one else is there but you.
Wow.
So I did that, and that was wonderful. And so I arranged that for a client. That was beautiful.
So anybody watching this show who's interested in doing any of these things should contact you, because once you know Suzanne in San Francisco, anything is possible.
Yeah, hopefully anything.
So CJ, what other suggestions do you have for this show that you can share with us?
Say that again.
What are the new plans or the future plans for this podcast that you can share now?
Well, a couple things that we're really excited about is we are expanding not just to San Francisco, but to incorporate, there's some really cool people that live in the East Bay or grew up in the East Bay. And there's a lot of inventions and movements that have happened in the Bay Area, including the 80s with rock and roll being a big thing. Also some professional athletes who are uh, widely renowned here in the Bay Area that we'd love to incorporate and include into our podcast. And of course, something that Michaela and I are really passionate about, which is restaurants and food. And we sure do know that the restaurant industry, is changing. So we definitely want to incorporate them and have them tell their story. And a part of what San Francisco is about is our ability to get together and the culture of what that is at night. So we want to encapsulate that as well.
This will be great also because so many restaurants have closed. I mean,
Exactly.
a lot of my favorite restaurants are closed. So it would be nice to keep people informed just by listening to you, who's still around and what new restaurants are popping up, and hopefully have recommendations based on experience in terms of where you wouldn't be disappointed when you try to satisfy your culinary cravings or anything to do with eating out, dining. So thanks. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Michaela, what about you?
Plans for the future of the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah, just like what Jay said, we're expanding our realm a little bit, and we're also reconfiguring the way that the podcast is being released. So we're doing it in sections where so we're doing 3 or 4 podcasts that are similar to each other to kind of create a sense of, I guess, a series as opposed to just random people talking. So everything's going to sort of flow together. And Susan's doing an amazing job of keeping all of this in track and all of these people and putting together a vision of where we're going to move forward. So we're excited to keep photographing and keep spreading the word of all these people and sharing everybody's stories. It's been really incredible to hear stories of very prolific people that you otherwise wouldn't realize were a part of these movements happening in San Francisco now and in the past.
Mm-hmm. So Suzanne, I know that most people that I know around the world love San Francisco, but over the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, my most recent visit to San Francisco, when I was there for a convention, people complained consistently about the homeless situation in San Francisco. Do you have any ideas about if that is going to be resolved, if it's going, because it's really damaged the San Francisco reputation. More and more foreigners that have come and experienced, the needles on the street or people defecating on the streets. Do you know, or can you speak to that situation in terms of cleaning it up?
Well, what I can say is this, the pandemic has hit the entire nation, including our beautiful city of San Francisco, so unbelievably hard in a way that hasn't happened in 100 years. So the homeless situation of 3 and 4 years has only bloomed into being very sad and really difficult to deal with. But our city is very good at coming together as a community and helping one another get things back on its feet. I go into the city probably 5 days a week because I have different things I have to do there. And I can tell you this for sure, the neighborhoods are really solid. When you go to Noe Valley, it feels like Noe Valley. And it feels like Noe Valley in a way that I had the feeling when I was younger, with community helping each other. And when you go to the Castro, the same thing. When you go to the Haight, the same thing. So each individual neighborhood is doing the very best that they can. Yesterday, I was in the city and I was driving down Ellis Street, and right in front of Gleave Memorial Church was a gigantic tent, and they were vaccinating people and giving people information. So even though things on the outside look like they're not as beautiful as usual, the energy and community is still there. You know, Cecil Williams' energy, even though he's really much older now, the minister that took over for him is organizing everyone. So San Francisco is rising from a phoenix, like a phoenix out of the ashes. It really, really is. And you just have to get your eyes tuned to seeing that, and you can begin to see the changes.
So any one of the three of you, I'm going to throw a question out there, and each of you can answer, or one person can answer, but somebody listening to this podcast, first of all, where would they find it? How would they find it?
That would be
Michaela?
for Michelle. Michaela.
So I usually sign us off on the podcast because I do our social media. So right now on your favorite podcasting streaming site, so whether that's Apple, Spotify, Google, you can find it anywhere. And then we are also at Beyond the Fog Radio on Instagram and on Facebook. So photos are posted there, little behind the scene tidbits are posted there. And yeah, we're out there in the thick of it.
Okay, so since my show is a global show now, and I'm proud to say, and I know that San Francisco is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I always boast about that. Since I moved to the United States 35 years ago, I've always lived in San Francisco. And a lot of people jumped ship during COVID, and they were saying, Jenny, why don't you just leave San Francisco? Move. I don't want to live anywhere else in the US. I love living here. So anybody listening to this particular segment that I'm doing with you guys or watching it and are fearful of coming to San Francisco because we have this taboo situation in our streets of homeless, and people think the city is unsafe. Some people have been attacked while visiting because they've told me this. What would this podcast, anyone on this podcast, want to say to them if that is a concern when life changes back to some degree of normalcy and people are traveling? What would you like to say to them to discourage any fears that they may have regarding coming to visit San Francisco as a tourist hangout?
I would say contact me at Beyond the Fog so that I can set everything up for them, whether it's a private tour or even an itinerary. I can give them ideas of where to stay and how to get around so that they feel completely safe the whole time that they're here.
So you will navigate the entire trip for them?
Yes, I can navigate their entire visit.
This is great, Suzanne, because a lot of times if you're going to a country, I mean, people Google everything now. But if you don't know someone there, oftentimes people went to the Chamber of Commerce and places like this for information or a tourist guide or some. But now with COVID, I don't know. I mean, everything is kind of like starting. We have to hit restart for everything. So this is great that you are a resource, because there's so many things that are so beautiful about San Francisco. Even if we have a homeless issue, I think people still need to come and experience our beautiful city.
Oh, it's drop dead beautiful. And I've been taking a hike. I've been taking hikes all over San Francisco and all over the Bay Area since COVID started. And I have seen more. I've seen more nature than I usually get to see in a year. I've seen, I go twice a week. So it's so beautiful.
As residents, do you guys, any of you live in the city?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So as a resident of San Francisco, what do you think it would take to at least control, if not eliminate, that homeless problem that we have?
Well, that's a multifaceted answer to one question.
Okay, so you can answer the part you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. Like what Susan said, there are a lot of programs and organizations that are at work on supporting people to provide services. There's also a change in what type of businesses exist in San Francisco. What I would love to see more of is more small businesses. I think more small businesses create a safer neighborhood for people to walk around, hang out, visit, like that. And you know, although our city is full of tech companies, there's room for other businesses as well, and there's so much talent here. And to have a variety of businesses that would employ and give opportunities to all the different people that live here would provide a livable place or livable wage for everyone to make a living and enjoy the city. So it's not just one group of people that enjoy San Francisco, but all groups of people that enjoy San Francisco. I mean, at one point we had so many artists and musicians, and I think we can go back to having more of that too.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm sure you guys just heard my alarm go off, so we're out of time, but I don't ever wrap my show up without giving my guests an opportunity to leave any information for anything that I didn't ask that they think it's pertinent to put out there. And whomever would like to answer this, please go for it. What haven't I asked you that you want people to know about Beyond the Fog Radio?
Yeah, I would love to let people know to also check out our website. It includes our podcast. You can listen directly there and the photos. And you can check us out on social media or anywhere else. The other thing that I want to leave your listeners with is listen to our podcast and allow that to broaden your horizon, to venture outside of the normal tourist place to visit, but go see some of the neighborhoods that we go visit and visit the restaurant owner that we talk to and enjoy that, because that's what we really want to share with you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I cannot wrap up without having you put in your last pennies.
Well, I 100% agree with Jay. I mean, the people that we've had the opportunity to interview have been amazing. I mean, I have learned so much about each person. And I mean, it's been truly, truly, truly wonderful. And having everyone be interviewed reminds me of the San Francisco that I grew up with and love and know so well. And so I would encourage everyone to please listen to our podcast, get to know the people that are on our podcast, and then walk the neighborhoods that they're talking about, because they're right here and they're really, truly wonderful.
And you, more than anyone, I would say, probably has a more patriotic feel about that city since your father was the mayor there. So I would imagine that you really, truly have a good sense of the city and want the best for it. And so I'm really grateful that I've had the chance to spend this time with the three of you to learn about your podcast and to learn how Beyond the Fog can help someone who is coming to San Francisco, thinking of coming to San Francisco, wants to come to San Francisco, and is listening to and fearful about, what is said about the homeless situation. So hopefully you've put that to rest, and anybody wanting to come and check out our beautiful city can contact you and navigate that whole venture safely and come and enjoy the beauty that the city has to offer. So thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Sure. And thank you for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. When a conversation is all you need to be inspired. And if these three did not inspire you, you were asleep. Wake up. And I will see you next time.